been said of Namibia's economic transformation, the main focus is really whether the concept and the approach has been inclusive for all Namibians. Now, to discuss this, I'm joined here in the studio by Lazarus Jacobs, a motivational speaker and co-founder as well as executive director of Paragon Investment Holdings. Good evening, sir, and thank you for joining us here on Business Today.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much.
We're talking economic transformation. What does it entail?
Well, economic transformation basically means that we need to change our economy in such a way that it will bring people who were otherwise excluded from to be main players in the economy, i.e. black Namibians. That's what transformation basically means to me.
27 years after independence, some might ask, why is it still relevant?
You see, it is very relevant because it hasn't happened. You know, because we have made a lot of efforts in terms of addressing it, but every day we are reminded that more still needs to be done. So we've been doing quite a lot of things. Government has been trying to implement policies and laws and so on, although certain laws still needs to be implemented. There are still policies that we can applaud the government for, but they are coming short of addressing the real issue here. And the real issue here is we should not address the symptoms, we should address the cause. Mm-hmm.
Before we get to the real issues, the efforts that have been employed to date, what is the evidence of success, minimal as it might be, for ensuring transformation and access to the resources for some that are excluded?
I can give you a few examples, but one that I would like to point out is the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources. I think in the early 90s when Namibians were applying for fishing quotas, there's just a few people. And the government, and specifically the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources, must be applauded. There is real broad-based black economic empowerment, the model that they did, that they chose people from all spheres of sectors of our society and economy, and they brought them in to become beneficiaries of this natural resource, and that is how it's supposed to happen. And I really think that if you look at what the Ministry of Fisheries is doing as a model, that's something that you can duplicate on all kinds of levels, because they say, okay, now that we have so many Namibians who have access to this so-called quota, not only that, now these Namibians who have this quota must also add values, beneficiation value, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And not only that, whatever benefits they accrue from that must also be spread amongst those who are the least among us. So this is a model that we should actually try to duplicate through all the sectors of our economy.
But critics of that approach say many of those that were given these fishing rights and quotas were quick to sell them. Is that so true? Is that widespread?
That it is true, and it is not surprising. Do you know why? Because if you look at how those quotas were allocated, it was somebody who has never had a job, he hadn't have income, or he had a job but he didn't have access to so much cash. You see, they cannot be faulted per se, but what we need to do is now Namibians, we can say, okay, we have, if not total control, we have a lot of control over our fisheries and marine resources. So now the benefits that we are getting from that, how are we going to apply that to the rest of our economy? How do we make sure that if Lazarus get an exploitation right for fisheries, how do we make sure that Lazarus builds a business? And if you just give me 30 seconds, and I'll explain this to you. Mm-hmm. And this is what we've done in Paragon Seafood Products. We came and said, yeah, we could have sold our quota and got a lot of money and spend the money however we want to do it. But we said, no, we are making sacrifices. And what we did is we started selling, we came up with a model, and you've probably seen it, called chow fish. What we did is we said, how do we benefit, how do Namibians, especially young unemployed Namibians, how do they benefit from these resources? So what we did is we said, if you're living in informal settlements, we're going to give you a free freezer. And we're going to give you a certain amount of fish stock that you can buy from us. I think it's about 2,000 Namibia dollars. And we will bring the fish to you. and then you can sell it into your economy. The only into your into your community. The only thing that we want you to have is you just have access to electricity. And so far, we have more than 200 this type of freezers across the country. You understand? That is the benefit, and this is, I think, what the ministry was also asking for. It's like, yeah, we give you the fishing quota, now what are you going to do with it? How do we make sure that you also not only benefit people, but how do we develop you as an entrepreneur?
But on the greater scheme of things, you say there are certain things that needs to be in place that are not yet in place. What are some of those?
You see, first of all, we need to look at what are the major players, what are the major contributors to our GDP. First of all, because you cannot talk about economic transformation without saying those people who control them, that our people need to also have access to the means of production. So what is it that we need to do? We need to make sure, first of all, that black Namibian entrepreneurs have access to capital. They need to have access to cheap capital. People can say, yeah, you can go to a bank and get money, but money is expensive, especially in our society, because the economy is small and so on. First of all. Secondly, we need to have a process of radical education, because I gave you the example the other day that I can give my daughter, let's say she's 15, I can give her $2 million and say, go do something with this $2 million. You will never do that because you do not trust her, because you don't think she has the maturity and the know-how to spend that money properly. And that's the same thing. We must not be proud. We need to admit that all of us, most of us, did not have that education. So we need to go through a process of education, starting from school level all the way to university, so that people can realize that economic transformation is a process, it's not an event. And it cuts across generations. That's why we start talking about whatever it is that we do in our economy, we must make sure that it ensures generational wealth. We shouldn't just give Lazarus a fishing quota that he's going to spend on an expensive car. We need to make sure that whatever money he gets now, his grandchildren, they say you are only wealthy if the wealth that you have created can benefit 2 generations after your death. That's what we need to start thinking about.
The policies that are in place that are supposed to usher through this transformation, are they adequate?
They are not adequate because although we applaud the effort to have these policies, whether it's NEF and a lot of state-owned enterprises have their own black economic empowerment policies and things like that, we have a couple of challenges. One is implementation. But before implementation, we always need to ask ourselves the question, these policies that we put in place, do they respond to the needs of our economy? You understand? It's very easy to say, okay, if I want a tender from NemPower, okay, let me go and get a tender from NemPower. I'm black. My white partners and me can go together and say, you see, I'm a black Namibia. I've got a 50% shareholding. Give us that tender. But am I when you're empowering me, when I get access to that tender, what happened to that dollar? Does that dollar exchange hands 10 times in the black community? Or does it exchange hands once, meaning that I get the money and I go and buy myself an expensive car and a fancy house and things like that? This is exactly, we need to look at this thing much bigger than just a question of, oh, okay, like somebody told me the other day, Lazarus, why are you guys talking about empowerment? Look at you, you are empowered. Empowerment is not about an individual. Empowerment is about a community, it's about a society, it's about a country. And it has been proven all over the world that no country can be successful if you just concentrate on individuals. Look at the Chinese, look at the Indians. They work as a community. Look at the Jewish community. They work as a community. That's how they become successful.
But there are specific policies in place, like for instance the NEF, which is yet a bill soon to be an act. Yeah. Does the formula that is proposed there, does it appear to be responsive to the challenges that we're facing?
It doesn't appear to be responsive because you saw the public outcry. The NEF, proposed NEF bill split our country straight in half and across racial lines. You understand? And it does not respond. And I always say this, and this might sound controversial. I always say this. When they designed apartheid, they did not consult black people. They said, this is what we want to, and remember, racism is all about economics. It's got nothing to do with race. It's about economics and how you can secure the preservation of your people, whoever those people are. Now, we were not consulted when they designed the party. They were just told, we were just told, as of tomorrow, you guys are going to move out of Katutura. You're not going to have business and things like that. So what we need to do, we need to take unpopular decisions. We keep talking about transformation. If we really, really want real change, we need to have a revolution. I'm not talking about we need to take up guns and things like that. We need to have a revolution and say, we need to take unpopular decisions. From now on, we're going to create institutions that are going to give access to black people exclusively. You follow what I mean? Because that's the only way you're going to do it. Transformation, you'll be at the mercy of whoever is in charge of the means of production. I'll give you an example. I just saw an insight now before I came into the studio, where they're talking about the tourism industry. It's the fastest growing industry in our country. Very good. But who benefits from the tourism industry? Not black Namibians. The majority of these businesses are owned by white Namibians. And we applaud them for that. And I think one of the gentlemen spoke about, we're creating jobs and things like that. Says, until when are we going to preach creating jobs for black people instead of saying we want black people to become employers as well? You follow what I mean? This is the radical thinking that we need to infuse in our society.
Specific needs of groups such as the young people, the SME sectors, how would that be then catered for within this transformation or revolution, as you put it?
We have a perfect opportunity for that, and I'm so happy you asked that question. I do a lot of workshops. I tour around the country under this thing called entrepreneurship, and I speak to young people. The primary reason they always say why it is tough to do business, they don't have access to money. And I said, all in well, you don't have access to money, but here's the thing. A lot of them will come to me and say, Lazarus, I've got a business plan of $5 million. How can I have access to $5 million? And I'm like, my brother, you just finished school yesterday. You haven't even proven yourself as an entrepreneur. Who's going to give you $5 million? So what we need to do to our people, and since we need to harness that entrepreneurial spirit, we must not discourage them. I can say, okay, instead of giving you $5 million, I'm going to give you $20,000. Prove yourself with the $20,000 or $30,000 first, and then we can grow exponentially. Because, and that's exactly what also happened with our people. We were given fishing quotas, we were given shares in companies and stuff like that, and we didn't do anything meaningful with it. Because first of all, we did not have the experience, and secondly, because it did not speak to the broader community and the needs of our broader community. So now, with our young people, we have a perfect opportunity to press the reset button.
Now, in trying to entrench this message on how to do business and how to manage your finances, where should one start? Is it only the young people or even the ones that are currently involved with business, or is it too late for those?
No, it's never too late. There are people like Roy Kroc, the guy who started, I think, McDonald's. He became successful when he was 66 years, I think. What we need to do is never too late. We must never say that. What we need to do is this. We need to embark on a serious program of education. And I'll give you an example. Let's talk a little bit about land. Mm-hmm. We can give people, and people say, we want land. I always say, well, land for what? You want for housing, you want land for farming. And I say, okay, let's talk about land for farming. There's no point, I'm a farmer as well, and I know what the challenges are with farming. There's no point in giving somebody access to a farm or money to buy a farm, but you don't educate them. And you don't give them access to free money to buy implements and things like. Give them tax break. Say 5 years, you're going to start repaying the farm for 5 years. But the challenge here, it is with all our policies, apart from implementation, is monitoring. Mm-hmm. You understand? The Afrikaners were brilliant at that when they took over the economy, especially in 1948, and then they accelerated in 1963. They gave Afrikaners land, and apart from that, they gave them breaks to pay the land, and they gave them tractors and all kinds of implements to work the land and things like that. And then they had a process of constantly educating them. Because remember, Afrikaners, by their very nature, were farmers. They were a peasant group of people. They were in concentration camps and things like that. So by the time they were taken out of those concentration camps from the British, they had to start a revolution, an economic revolution to empower our people. Why can't we do the same thing? Mm-hmm.
You keep making reference to funding, and you're making reference to free or cheap money. Mm-hmm. Where is this going to come from? The public sector?
Absolutely. Because the thing is, the more... let me give a simple example. Let's say you have our economy is relatively small. But what we need to do is, instead of milking the small group of people that are doing something, let's try and increase the tax base. How do we increase the tax base? By encouraging people to create more businesses so we can employ more people. The more people you employ, we have resources here. We can tell people, if we employ a certain amount of people, we'll give you a tax break. If we give you a tax break, that's how you grow the tax base. With the tax base, you can grow your kitty in order for you to give people access to free money.
Maybe lastly, tomorrow you're also having a discussion with young people. What is your discussion going to focus on?
The topic is called empowernomics, what's to be done. And these are some of the things I'm going to talk. How are we going to do this? And here's finally, if you look at the genesis of the black entrepreneur in our country, we started and we were given free quotas, and then before we know it, people were given affirmative. I mean, you are a black economic empowerment partner and things like that. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to break that cycle so that we are able to build an economy for black Namibians which can ensure generational wealth.
Mr. Jacobs, let me thank you so much for making time talking to us here on Business Today.
Thank you.
Sure. Lazarus Jacobs, motivational speaker, co-founder and executive director of Paragon Investment Holdings, talking to us about Namibia's economic transformation. He prefers more economic revolution rather than transformation.